Olá, muito bom dia para mais um Keynote do Workshop Engenharia de Requisitos. Eu tenho a honra de apresentar a vocês o professor Óscar da Universidade Politécnica de Valência. Óscar é uma figura muito conhecida na nossa comunidade, não só da engenharia de requisitos, mas na comunidade de engenharia de software em geral. Tem sido bastante ativo em vários tópicos, com centenas de publicações em journals, conferências e livros, em capítulos de livros. Portanto, vocês, a maior parte de vocês conhecem o trabalho do Óscar, dos interesses dele em engenharia de software em geral, Model Driven Development, engenharia de requisitos, Business Process Modeling. Portanto, ele é uma pessoa bastante ativa e tem muito para falar para a gente aqui, tá? Eu tive o prazer de, ter interagido com o Óscar em várias situações, várias conferências, e o que todo mundo conhece é que ele sempre apoiou todos os colegas e os alunos, portanto, e é uma pessoa que, brilha em qualquer comunidade, tanto uma pessoa que que agrega. Tanto ele, temos o prazer de tê-los aqui. E só para complementar, ele tem contribuído bastante na comunidade latino-americana, tá? E ibero-americana, em várias conferências, como o CIPS, incluindo também o UER, tá? Bom, eu podia estar aqui falando por uma hora, né, sobre o Óscar, mas isso aí ia tomar bastante o tempo do keynote dele. Portanto, Óscar, muito bem-vindo. The floor is yours. Só para relembrar, ele vai fazer uma pequena apresentação em espanhol ou portunhol, mas a apresentação vai ser em inglês, porque alguns elementos da audiência aqui são English speakers. Ok, Óscar, obrigado e seja muito bem-vindo.
Okay, Joao, thank you very much for your warm words. So can you see the main? Yes, I think you see the title of my presentation. I am going to make the presentation in English, so please don't go. Those of you that are English speaking, don't go, because I will just make the presentation in English. But those that know you well, me, you know that I love Portuñol. I like to use Portuñol. So just let me start with a few words in Portuñol for the starting of the keynotes. Bueno, una licença para falar um pouco de Portuñol, nada mais, sobre todo para compartir com vocês, que realmente fico feliz, orgulhoso, agradecido de estar aqui nesta celebração dos 25 anos do UER. Eu queria falar especialmente, vou esquecer pessoas, mas queria começar falando do meu amigo, colega Júlio Leite. Ele falava na apresentação do keynote de Daniel, ele falava de como a gente precisa da inteligência, na apresentação da conferência também, que a gente precisa da inteligência, da engenharia de requisitos. E por 25 anos o ERA trabalhado muito duro em fazer este sonho realidade. Júlio falava também da ideia de I care because I serve because I care. I think acho que está muito claro a dedicação de Júlio em toda esta faena. A parte técnica também está muito clara. Quando o software não está bem pensado, falava Júlio no outro dia, quando não está bem considerado, nada funciona corretamente. E os impactos sociais dos artefactos são tremendos. Então, penso que o tema do UER, a importância, a relevância do UER é algo que está fora de toda dúvida. Não só Júlio, que é a pessoa que me introdujo inicialmente no UER, faz muitos anos já, mas eu queria agradecer muito, reconhecer o trabalho de Jaelson, de Graciela, que junto com Júlio estão fazendo realidade todo este grande esforço esta gran familia de Ware. Vou esquecer nomes, mas eu queria também não deixar de citar a Leandro, nossos viagens por la Pampa, Leandro e Maria, o Víctor, que ficou em Valência, também Fernanda, Roxana e as conferências que disfrutamos juntos, Gladys, Márcia, Joao, tanta gente tan querida. Então, Julio, Jaelson, Graciela e todo o time de Ware. Son 25 años, entonces parabéns por 25 años de servicio fantástico, desinteresado, de gran nivel científico que toda a comunidade de ingeniería de requisitos reconoce. Estoy orgulloso y feliz de ser parte de esa familia y de haber tenido Ware en Valencia. Es un gran orgullo. Ok. Entonces, dicho todo esto en portuñol, ya paso, I move to English. And let me just share with you the past, the present, and the future of what we are doing in the context of part of the history of Ware, because we have participated in most of the editions, and the history of what we have done is running in parallel to the history of Ware. But I am going to talk about this conceptual alignment of enterprise models and software applications using a perspective that is the perspective that we have been using for years. I think that all my career has been oriented to make true this dream of the model-driven systems engineering. Okay, now I have to acknowledge the contributions of the people that belong to my team in these three directions. That is what we are doing right now. The first dimension is oriented to a strategic model-driven development. And what we try to do here is to extend our object-oriented software, model-driven software production method to the world of organizational modeling. We have René Noel that is completing a great PhD work together with Ignacio, Marcela, and myself in this line of research that is complemented with what Rosa Velázquez is doing in her work on improving understandability of conceptual models, but studying and making feasible the automatic evaluation of business process models using machine learning. Well, again, with René, Ignacio, myself, and finally, the ontological perspective that we strongly explore, because for us, a conceptual model is the representation of a sound, well-defined foundational ontology that is fixing the concepts that are used in a given information system. So Beatriz Martins, that is coming from the NEMO group, the Giancarlo and Renata Guisardi group in Vitoria, now in Twente and Bolzano, is doing that together with Lenin, with Jose Reyes and myself, working on ontologies for system security. But I want to focus in this first part and the second part, but especially the first one, the strategic model-driven development in this keynote. And let me first of all contextualize what we are doing and why we are doing that. Now we talk about the past. I remember that 4 years, well, when we presented our model-driven software production platform, that was the old methodology, with a tool that has an industry materialization, that is Integra Novas, a company that is still working and doing their business with what we did in the past, that was to generate a working code from a conceptual model. So we were just moving our model-driven platform at that time, we were talking about the startings of the 2000s, where was just taking a platform-independent model, a conceptual model that was compiled. And indeed, we were talking at that time about conceptual modeling programming or conceptual schema-centric software development, because in that case, the platform-specific model was a model compiler and the model was the code. This was our motto here. The model is the code, instead of saying that the code of the application is the model. Okay, after that, we were trying to go up in the abstraction process space, and we were talking about, well, we have here conceptual models that were executable, but where do these conceptual models come from? And well, this is where we connected with the requirements engineering and the business process modeling communities, because we were trying to understand why a conceptual model was representing a given business process model, a given organization, a given enterprise. And Sergio España, Marcela Ruiz, Ignacio Panac, and this is the many people that were working on this idea of putting something in the top on the conceptual model platform, to know or to understand why the conceptual model was the one that we were using and not another one. And this was what we did with this business process modeling with communication analysis strategy, where we were just extending our model-driven platform with a computation-independent model that, through a well-defined model transformation, was generating the conceptual model. Well, in that case, we were not talking about from models to code, but we were talking about trying to make through the idea, the challenge of going from requirements to the code through this double transformation process. Okay, but after that, the question that arises in a natural way was what information at the organizational level must be considered for designing a strategically aligned information system. It was not only the problem of eliciting the requirements and documenting them, but why these requirements? What is the strategy that was decided at the organizational level in order to use these business processes and not others? And just answering this question lead us to what we are doing now in the René Noel's PhD. That is one of the main parts of my talk today, the lead strat, that is just trying to answer this question by shaping the organizational structure around the business about the business outcomes in order to get a strategy IT alignment. That is what we achieve by using business modularity. So you will see that in our transformation here, well, the business modularity is what is going to characterize the business process model that is converted into a conceptual model that is executable, following our software production process. But in that case, we want to emphasize in what we call, or we refer to, a strategic alignment, where we try to combine in a precise way strategy of the organization, the organizational structure of the enterprise, and the systems, the information system that are materializing this strategy through this structure. Well, this is how to support business process and software designer to stay strategically aligned is what we do by a transformation that is moving from business processes to the communication analysis to requirements, functional and non-functional requirements that are transformed into the conceptual models that are executed. So the question that I'm going to face here is, well, what we are trying to go, and this is what I referred to as our working strategy in the last 20 years, is, we started going from conceptual models to code. After that, we move from requirements to code, and going upper. Now we want to go from the strategy to the application code that is materializing that strategy by precising the guidelines that we have to use for designing strategically aligned processes and semi-automated transformations, because in that case we cannot compile the strategical model, but we can give a clear guidelines in order to have traceability from the strategy to the business processes that are materializing the considered strategy. Okay, so let me just go through this main part of what I want to discuss with you, what we call the lead strat method. That's a modeling, both a modeling language and a modeling procedure, whose motivation is clear. It's just focusing on strategic alignment as the key for a digital transformation. Of course, we are not starting from scratch. There's a lot of work in the area of business strategy. We start with this definition from Misberg in the 87s, last century already. We could say that defines business strategy as the definition of courses of action to achieve the organizational goals. Okay, so there are different tools that we know well: Ultimate, BNB, ISTAR, Chaos, T3 Value. There are many notions that sometimes are not so clearly defined. I think that the ontological perspective is a big problem here because it's not absolutely clear that when we are talking about capability or objectives or tactics or goals or strategies, we are all talking about the same precise notion when we are dealing with different approaches. There is probably a common intuition behind the term, but it's not always the case that we are talking about exactly the same thing. This is important for us because we detect that in reality, in real cases, we have business silos where people are just, where a company, a big enterprise is just organized in a set of different organizational structures, each one with its corresponding system. And these business silos, when there is people moving or leaving a given department now, or there are things that should move from one department to another, from one organizational structure to another, this is always a problem for the organization. The problem is still bigger when we consider strategies, because a strategical change can perfectly involve changes or should involve changes in the organizational structure and the subsequent information system. What breaks this business silos picture and creates a problem of complexity when we are talking about the management of this business complexity. Well, this is what we try to achieve, this kind of business modularity, where strategy, organizational structure, and systems all together works in the same direction. In that case, what we want to do is to shape organizational structure around business outcomes, as I said before, in order to get this strategy IT alignment that is the main goal of our work. Well, this is what I was saying before, but when I was talking about the complexity of the different terms, one thing that was especially relevant for us is that some of these notions are short-term in the sense that they change frequently. For instance, the strategy or the capabilities or a given goal or tactic can change because the company, the enterprise has some concrete need, while there are others that we can see here that are longer in the sense that they are part of the hardcore of the company, of the enterprise, the vision, the mission, or the capabilities. So we distinguish that because what we are going, or what we do with our lead strategy is to focus on these concepts that are in green in this picture, because we assume that the company has a vision, has a mission, has a set of capabilities, and what it should focus on is in the dynamic, in the agile management of goals, strategies, objectives, tactics, and so on, and the right assignment to the organizational structures, considering their units, their roles, and all the relevant actors of these concepts. Well, this is what is behind our method, the design that has the main purpose, the main goal of modeling business strategy. And this is what we are, when we try to do that, we consider it especially to kind of design the goals that were associated to two different kinds of stakeholders. On the one side, we have the senior level management, and on the other side, we have the business analyst, the working context. They are connected, of course, but they have different intentions or purposes, because at the senior level management, we must provide a common language that is close to the business strategy and to what experts talk about when they have to concretize the strategy that the enterprise must follow. On the other side, there should be a high level and detailed level conversion that makes this generic system description understandable for the business analyst. At the same time, we have a business meaningful procedure that must connect with the modeling strategy that, from a model-driven development perspective, is taking into account to materialize these requirements, these features of the business processes of the enterprise. At the end, we have to consider from these two kind of stakeholders both a language and a procedure. A language that should have a reduced set of constructs and relationships that are dealing with business strategy and with the organizational structure of the enterprise, and a sound procedure that is guiding what to do, that is meaningful from the business perspective, and that should be repeatable and simple enough to be used in a reasonable, friendly way by the business analyst. Well, of course, we look and we studied in depth what current solutions are doing. They are really brilliant in the sense that we have here Archimate, iStar, BMM. Well, there are solutions where people have put a lot of work and interest, but we have detected that when we try to evaluate which one is providing a clear solution for these issues of business strategy concepts with an ontological background, the organizational structure concepts and the modeling procedures to follow together with the hopefully reduced set of constructs, well, we don't find any final solution. And this is where we just had a look on the situational method engineering approach to try to make a clever and intelligent combination of constructs and relationships that could provide us with the method that we were looking for. And well, this is the LeetStrat language. I'm going just to give you a short summary of the main characteristics of the language. We have tried to make it simple, to make it easy, and to make it understandable. That is something that we have been fighting in the iStar context, where we find the language extremely powerful, but too complex when we have been trying to use it in practical settings with expert practitioners. So here we have a clear set of concepts. That is the actor, that entity is external to the organization and whose behavior affects or is affected by the organization. We have tried not to reinvent the wheel. We have tried to reuse definitions when we have found that they are clear enough and they are even shared by more than one solution. This is the concept factor that both iStar and Archimate use. The next relevant concept is the organization unit. That is a group of social actors that work together to achieve a goal, and that represents either organization under analysis or the subunits of a given organization. Also, Archimate and iStar are providing this definition. And the roles are abstractions of well-defined behaviors in the organizational context. And together with that, these four concepts that have some kind of conceptual hierarchy, that is the goal, strategy, the objective, and the tactic. So the goals are in the LeetStrat context. This is important to precise. In the LeetStrat context, a goal and a statement about the state or condition of the organization to be achieved by appropriate strategies. So a goal will be related to connected to strategies that are high-level actions towards the achievement of a goal. So this forces us to, when we are thinking about goals, we must also determine the limit. What are the strategies that will be used in order to define the tactics? Tactics are concrete actions towards the implementation of the strategy. So from the goal, we have the strategies that have tactics associated with them. And finally, associated with the tactics, we have the objective. With the goal, we have the objectives. Objectives are statements of a measurable target that the enterprise seeks to meet to achieve its goals. Well, this is we have also some structural relationships that are the influence, the refinement, the assignment. Influence just represents a dependency relationship that describes an action or a behavior that is affecting the goals of either an actor or an organizational unit. Refinement is a hierarchical relationship representing that a source element, either a goal, strategy, or a tactic, is operationalized or made more concrete or materialized by using a selected target element, either a strategy, a tactic, or an objective. And the assignment, that is finally a structural relationship representing the allocation of a responsibility or the performance of a behavior of the execution of some task. Well, this is basically the language. We have, as you see, not too many concepts, and of course, behind the language, we need a procedure, we need a method. That is what we refer to as the little strat modeling procedure, that have these four main steps: the external influence modeling, strategy modeling, the roles and responsibility modeling, and the reaction modeling. Well, let me just comment briefly, one by one, how we operationalize them in practice. From the external influence modeling point of view, we try to answer these two questions: what's happening outside, and what do we want under this situation? So we have external authors that influence our enterprise, and this generates a set of goals that must be just taken into account by the organization that is under study. Well, as I said, after that, goals are materialized into strategies, because we need to answer the question of, well, we have this external influence. How do we get what we want to counteract this external influence? And who has the capabilities to do it? This is what we answer by determining what are going to be the strategies that are associated to a given goal, and what are going to be the tactics, and which unit within the organization should be aware of that, and should take into consideration how to face this external influence that is worrying and affecting the company. Well, in that case also, we can use within the unit, we introduce the notion of role that we saw before, and we also determine what are the objectives that can allow us to measure in which degree the tactic that we have decided to put in practice for the result of a given strategy to satisfy the particular goal, how this is affecting in concrete ways a particular business process model. Well, as you see, we try to create or to put the use of concepts in context. So we start with external influence. After that, we determine the strategies that answer the goals, and after that, we move into the tactics and objectives perspective, that is just creating these roles and responsibility modeling task. After that, the reaction modeling is just taking into account the answer to these two questions: what value proposition results from our strategy, and to whom is it addressed, and who do we depend on to implement our strategy. So here we have a different kind of extensions. On the one side, how the unit is influencing the result of the new strategy that we are putting into practice, and also on the other side, which actors are just also affecting or interacting in a different way after the materialization of this new strategy. And also there are some internal consequences, because other organizational units can be affected by the put into practice of these new tactics and objectives, and it's also part of the relevant information that our models must contain. Okay, we have, this is just, of course, we have a meta model that is just making concrete, precising what are all these concepts and how they relate to each other. I'm not going to enter into too much detail, but of course we have a lot of information about any point that I am commenting. In case you were interested in, just contact me with my contact that is in the talk that will be available to the organizers for you. And just as a simple example, just to let you know how this looks like in practical cases that we are now trying to use, because we are now in the step of trying to use and to get empirical evidences of how well as we want to happen, how well the LiteStrat process is working when we apply it in real cases. Well, that case is just referring to, this is a company, our company, that is offering courses, and we have a company in the competence that is offering, well, we offer paid courses, but that company is offering free courses. So this is a challenge, an external influence that can affect clearly what our main goal, our main purpose. So there is a clear goal for our company as learned, that is, well, that next quarter sales projection should be retained. And to do that, this is the goal. Remember that goals for us must be refined into strategies. So there are, for instance, here, there is one strategy that is just offering 30 days trial that is going to be well materialized by, in this case, two tactics. One tactic that is to improve the enrollment process and to improve also the content protection, because we were not used to give open material for free to people. So we have to take care of these two tactics that are related to the corresponding strategy. As you see, the conceptual hierarchy here is preserved. We have goals that are related to strategies that are materialized in tactics, and these tactics at the end have they are assigned to concrete units of our enterprise. In that case, they improve the enrollment process is just a move to the user experience designer, and there is a concrete objective here that is just making measurable how well we do this tactic, that is the enrollment should be done in no more than 5 minutes. And from the content producer organizational unit, we have here that, well, we have to assess that 80% of content is protected by these rights, policies, protection, that is the DRM. And well, you can see, I just wanted to give you an idea of how this LiteStrat work in practice. As you see here, we are just determining what are the strategies and what are the tactics that are making us assess the fulfillment of the goals that at the end will be converted into business process models that will connect with our software production method. So we are just putting another component in our software production chain that is just focusing on this strategical perspective that the LiteStrat approach wanted to establish. Well, as I told you, we are working in two directions, both in practical settings and also in academy, in our master courses, where we are doing some experiments. In particular, I want to report one that we did last year, and that is just comparing the iStart with the LiteStrat. And what we explore in this experiment is if the proposed LiteStrat method could yield better quality than iStart, both in the use of the method and in the resulting models. Well, there are some details about the experimental settings here. At the end is 28 third years undergraduate students that read a business strategy case and have to model it using paper and pencil, because we don't have tools for doing that. But we provide a training session of 50 minutes in both each group in the method that they are going to use. And we wanted to evaluate if there are differences in all these aspects: efficiency, user satisfaction, complexity, and accuracy. Well, in that case, for us, of course, it's just it's a first exploration. The result that was interesting for us is that the accuracy of LiteStrat was higher than the accuracy of the iStart, without affecting the other dimensions. What is interesting, the dimensions for time and for efficiency, user satisfaction, and complexity were quite similar. So the conclusion that we got here is that accuracy was better without affecting the characteristics that we had considered for the two methods. Well, why this happens? So obviously, it is true that LeetStrat is more accurate in capturing business strategy because there are specific constructs and a guided modeling process to do that. Well, of course, accuracy could be better in that case because the strategical nature of LeetStrat is clear. So we are aware of that. We are still, I think that what was surprising for us is that we expected to have in the complexity measurement better result, but what we see is that at least for this master students level, they find complex anyway to work with either iStar or LeetStrat, and this is why we are still wondering how to make it still more simple, or create at least creating this illusion of simplicity for the users. Well, also, I think that another important point is that I was telling you that we want to connect that with the business process model that is materializing this strategical vision of the enterprise. We do that by reusing models or having repeatable models that allow us to integrate the models that were previously done, and that facilitates business process modeling. We have seen that if we take this role and objective part of the final strategical analysis, it is a good guideline to determine what are the processes that should appear in the business process model that is a consequence of this strategic model. And this is what we are doing, and we are doing that through a set of supporting initiatives that are running in parallel now. I think that the more relevant now for us is a project that we are just starting, a 3 years project that is agile development of systems from requirements to code. So this is a Spanish and European project that where we are going to try to go as much further as possible in the direction that I am discussing with you. But in parallel, and especially taking into account that René Noel comes from the University of Valparaiso and has strong connection in Chile, in the Chile academic background, we have a set of master projects and final degree projects that are being developed in parallel in Valparaiso and in Valencia. I have selected a few of them, 3 of them here. The first one that is the web-based modeler for communication analysis, because we need tools. So we are just focusing on this tooling effect in order to provide tools that can help people to practice these ideas and to use them with these tools. We are working on the user experience and the user interface perspective for LeetStrat, because, this is connected to what I told you before. We need a tool that should keep this illusion of simplicity as much stronger as possible. So this is something that is being also done. We are working on the architectural problem, exploring a distributed architecture for integrating models. What we want to do here is, assuming that with LeetStrat we provide a common ontological background, it makes sense to connect models that are done in different locations when the strategies are the same, and this model reuse is a relevant aspect that we want to explore, because it makes it feasible to talk about strategical model integration. Finally, I think that it is interesting the interaction that we have with the Dimitris Karagiannis groups and his ADOC's office in Vienna, in Austria. We are implementing LeetStrat in this framework that is well-known, that is at the European level, a well-known repository of model-driven tools that is going to include also the LeetStrat proposal. As well, this is our intention with this work that is pretty advanced. Okay, so this is what I wanted to tell you with respect to this the first dimension of the 3 dimensions that I was sharing with you. To finish my speech, I want to introduce another perspective that is the second one, that is related with the quality of the conceptual models that we create and we deal with, and in particular, the dimension of understandability. So we want to be sure that we are able to improve understandability of conceptual model, and what we are trying to create here is a method for assisted modeling. Well, again, we are not... yeah?
Oscar, do you want to take some questions before we start this part?
Well, I had that in mind, so I think that your comment is very appropriate. I saw Daniel did that yesterday. Yes. I think it's a good idea. It's a good point to that. Okay, perfect.
Okay, Dan, do you want me to read, or you can unmute and ask yourself?
Well, I see that Daniel is asking, is the aspect of a strategy complete enough to support code generation? No, the answer is clearly no. In that case, we did a complete code generation from conceptual models to software application. We did that. We cannot do that with a strategy. With the strategy, what we are trying to provide is a set of as much precise as possible guidelines to provide a traceability. We want to provide to the analyst the capability of knowing which is the goal or the strategy that is justifying the existence of a given business process. We want to explore what degree of automation could be provided, but definitely the answer is no. We are convinced that a complete support of code generation is not feasible, but we want to provide as much traceability as possible. Also, Daniel is asking, so far the experiment tests how good the modeling is, not how well it supports generation of code. Well, it's a good, yes, you're right, it's a good question. We want to check both things. We want, of course, to test how good the modeling is with the ontological background and with this part that I will comment in the second part of the presentation. How well the support for generation of code is important anyway, because up to our experience, this method is the most advanced one, providing what I said before, traceability, giving a complete traceable trip of how a strategy is converted into goals that are materialized in business processes that are just created to attack the goal, and these business processes are converted into a conceptual model that's executable. So what is nice here is that we don't provide a full automated process, but we provide a fully traceable process that is, methodologically speaking, going one step further from our honest opinion.
Okay, thanks. Now, a question from Julio and then Giles.
Óscar,
Julio,
so nice to see you.
It's a shame that we lost the meet by the screen. No, I would like to share your hand and hug you.
Right. Thank you for sharing this new research that you are doing. Very good. Henrique Souza, who worked with me, also did some work with this. His thesis was on creating a language, GPI, Goal Process Indicators. It's very nice that you went also through this path of going to the strategic level. But my question is, first question is, what is really the difference between strategy and tactic, and why do you need the objective if this was not provided by the concept goal? Mm-hmm. So those two pairs, strategy, tactic, and goal objective. What were the main reasons why you proposed those four concepts, but mainly the difference between goal and objective, strategy and tactic?
Well, thanks for this question, because it's a result of a lot of discussion with many colleagues. Also, is part of discussions that we had ourselves in the past that when we look at the different solutions that we find currently, we detect that there is a kind of ontological mismatch. Because people, for instance, let's take the term goal. People discuss about goal-oriented requirements engineering, and when we ask people to define clearly what is a goal, my impression, my feeling has always been that, well, even if probably a common intuition is behind, people are not talking about the same exactly. So our question was, okay, we know that we don't want to reinvent the wheel and to do something from scratch, but let's try to be precise, ontologically speaking, giving our identity card. So for us, when you are in Lit Strat, you should have a very clear perspective of what is a goal. It's a goal in Lit Strat, not a goal in general, because we assume that a goal or a strategy or an objective can be seen differently in other approaches. But we needed to distinguish, first of all, we wanted to distinguish the goal as a kind of general statement that should be accomplished without entering in any further detail. So we want that. It's something that we need, is the most abstract definition. It's the first thing. This is my goal. We could have called it a desire. We want that, a wish. So the problem is when we want something, how can I achieve it? So what do I do? Imagine that, okay, your goal is to have a given partner. Right? You like to be the partner of a beautiful woman or man, that doesn't matter. Right? So what to do? What is the strategy? So one thing is the goal. The other is the strategy. What actions should I do to achieve my goal? And when you have the strategy, there is a problem of implementation. I have the strategy, but the tactic is, okay, now I know what I want to do, how am I going to do it? So we needed something different. This is why we created a tactic associated to the strategy to distinguish between the high-level actions and the concrete actions that are directed towards the implementation of the strategy. And finally, we leave the objective notion to connect with the business process modeling perspective, because the important thing here is that it's measurable. We can measure. With the objective, we have something that if the tactic is working well, you could provide a proof, an experimental proof that you are doing it well. Well, this is what we think that is clear enough to give our methodological contribution to how to do that. We are absolutely convinced that it's not the solution, it's a possible, valid solution, but we are still just always wondering when we look. This is the ontological exercise that we always do. When we see that somebody is talking about objective, the very first thing is to align our definitions, to have a very clear view of what you are meaning by objective, and to let you know what we are meaning by objective. And only when we do this connection, we can talk about everything.
Very good. Thank you very much, Óscar.
Thanks, Julio. And for sure, I mean, Rene and Ignacio and Rosa and myself will contact you, because now we are going to enter all this process of related work, detailed related work comparisons. And I think that we can do a very, very fruitful work together.
Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be great. Thank you, Óscar.
Thank you. And then a question from Gelson.
Hey, Óscar, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you. It's very interesting. I had a chance to talk with René when I was visiting last March, and I think this is a very promising kind of work. But, however, it's not clear from our iStar community, at least, perspective, what is really the difference. And I know that you had a slide, making some comparisons, and you also had this experiment, but playing the devil, advocate, I think you have not convinced many of the iStar believers, right? So basically, you have tactic, which is something new. You have two kinds of goals and objectives, which are kind of confusing for most of the people. perhaps with the ontological foundation, it can be clarified. But let's see, your example could be perfectly explained in terms of either standard I-star or more than 100 extensions are available. So when you say you have the experiment, say that, something was better or worse than the other, I'm not convinced that this is really enough. You give, 50 minutes, 1 hour presentation to some kind of unexperienced people, students, typically undergrad or postgrad, and then you claim that, this is the result. So basically, it depends how good they were exposed to the different techniques, and how good they are, etc. So it's very difficult to compare, just in essence. And I think it's interesting. I like the influence that you play and the Tate, explicit Tate. But I suppose if you could perhaps talk to Enio Gonçalves, the guy that did the literature review on I-star extension, he will probably tell you that there may be some extension already dealing with some of these aspects. So I'm not sure, but I think you have to do a better job at explaining the differences, and why this is really, let's say, extending, the abilities, the modeling, abilities. This is playing the devil advocate. I don't want you to take this as something negative. It's just my perspective. But I'll be in Valencia, hopefully in the future, and we can discuss a lot about this. So what do you say about this?
I like very much this game of devil's advocate, and I am eager to discuss with you here in Valencia many things around that. Is going to be a very, very fruitful discussion. But let me tell you just in a short answer that, it's interesting that I share almost 100% what you have said. Remember that I consider myself a member of the I-Star community. And, my very first question when we started to do that together with Rene, Ignacio, Marce, and so on, was just the idea, a very simple idea. I-Star is okay, but when people are using it, it's too complex. So why is so complex? Because normally for people that are being used I-Star in practice, their reaction, just summarizing, is always the same. They like the idea of doing this organizational modeling, they like it, but they find it very difficult and even useless when the problem is very big, because when the problem is very big, everything becomes at the end a mess. So what I will discuss with you, when you will be here, is what we tried to do. There is a very interesting secret that we can make public now, Rene, that is the why LitStrat, because LitStrat, the intention, the first intention of our work was to work with something that we call light I-Star. Light I-Star. It was a simplified I-Star. So, for instance, if you want to deal with strategies, you need to have a strategy concept by yourself, and you want to extend or to relate the strategy with tactic. Well, you needed to have this only, not more, only that thing, because it's what you wanted to do. So this light I-Star become lit strategy because it was just strategic oriented. Well, I'm just this is running for 2 years, and just step by step we were considering that I-Star, the problem of I-Star is that it was too flat. It was too many things and too many different interpretations when people were using methodologically I-Star. And this is why we move to that. But even when I was listening to you, when I discussed with Rene this comparison, I was telling him, well, just almost the same you were telling me. This is not clear. I mean, why what do we put when we have to evaluate business strategy concepts in iStar, as we do here? Why do we put that? Well, because more or less, okay, but more or less can be taken by some people that is enough. But well, for us, it's not enough and it's too confusing. I think that this is a problem of lack of semantic clarity. I think this is the point. But I think that as I finish as I started, this will be for sure the source of very, very fruitful and nice discussions here.
Okay, thank you. I think you can proceed with the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for all these nice, attractive questions. And let me go to the second part. That was that one. It was the evaluation of the quality. That is important because somewhat, well, it was one of the questions of Dan. That one is we are worried about the quality of the models that we are generating. I was just indicating that we are not starting from scratch because we just take the Linland framework, distinguishing between syntactic, semantic, and pragmatic quality dimensions. From the syntactic point of view, well, probably everything we wouldn't expect to have much more problems because we have a clear ontological basis and a syntax that is just defining for the ontological parts of the language and the meta model that is defined for it. The semantic one that, well, it contains all the statements about the domain that are relevant to the problem. Well, this was part of the last Jaelson question. We have reflected a lot about what to include in the language. So it's a rational decision. It doesn't mean that it's the correct one, but it's a rational decision. The concepts that we are using are there because we want them to be there. The pragmatic is the one that is just making us feel more worried. The model should be well understood by the relevant audience. And well, we have many doubts at this respect, and this is the part that we try to explore in depth. And this is why we are exploring this pragmatic quality through the dimension of model understandability, connecting that to machine learning. And this is another PhD thesis that is just on its way now with Rosa Velázquez. And
Óscar,
yeah.
Please face the camera. You're facing downward. Face the camera, please.
Okay. That way?
Very good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dan. Well, so I was here and here now again by understandability, we mean the degree to which information contained in a process model can and should be easily understood by a reader of that model or stakeholders. This is not at all a new definition. It's something that is coming from the Rager's work in 2011. Well, we are also paying a lot of attention on proposals that we have studied in depth at the sequel from John Croxty, understandability, characterization that Dikichi did in his paper 2018. And also from the empirical perspective, we also want to be sure that, we are aware of all the research that has been done about factors that affects understandability and what is their impact. So we have selected these 4 papers because they are influential in what we try to do. All these initiatives in general, our conclusion is that they are focused on a limited set of factors. And the additional problem that we detect on that is that they don't explore in depth the relationship among them. This is what we want to do, and we want to do that at 2 levels. On the one side, we have the user's modeling perspective, and on the other one, we have this idea of creating a modeling assistant. So from the user's modeling, we want to be able to determine the level of understandability and which are the factors that affect it. And our final purpose is to have a model with a higher level of understandability, even including an assistant that is just learning what are the factors that must be taken into account in order to have a more understandable model. Well, for us, there are three main steps here that, well, it is our solution is based on what you see in the header, the design of a method that intends to assess the understandability of business process models based on machine learning in order to predict whether a model is really, well, will be understandable by normal stakeholders. We have three steps here. First step is based on empirically studying the relationship among factors that influence or affect the understandability. This is one of the reasons that led us to create this hierarchy between goal, strategy, tactic, and objective, because it's a way to make it easy to the users of the language to create the models. After that, when we characterize these factors, our intention is to design an automatic understandability evaluation model of the business process model by applying machine learning techniques that should correlate the understandability factors and the indicators that we have in the models. This is what we are trying to do now by different experiments that we are performing with students in both Valencia and Valparaiso. And finally, the last part of the work that is still to be done is to integrate this automatic understandability of the evaluation model with an assisted modeling tool that should guide the modeler in building understandable models. This would, I think, I go back to the example of the hierarchy, because if we could create some kind of interaction, conversation between the intelligent conversation between the user and the tool, where, well, you have an external influence, and the tool is asking you, the machine is asking you, okay, what is the goal that you should take into account in order to counteract against this this goal. And so you introduce your goal, and after that the machine can tell you, okay, now you should determine what is going to be the strategy that you want to put into practice in order to face this goal. And you start to define the strategy, and after that the tactic, and after that the objective. So if we guide the users to do that, this understandability evaluation model can make sense, and even more, we can implement an assisted modeling tool to do it. Well, this is the idea, how to measure the understandability. What we are doing, and we're starting to do now already, is we have a model, and our users complete both a questionnaire to characterize the audience. This is important because, for instance, we have to precise what is the background of the in that case students. Could be done also for practitioners. It's not the same to have people that knows ISTAR or are used to deal with requirement specifications than an audience that is not at all used to do that, because the context, the working context is different, and the results that we want to measure are going to be logically different also. A user also completes a survey to measure understandability. That is the most experimental part of the process. And from the audience characteristics and the model characteristics that any user gets, we evaluate the understandability, and we create what we call a future vector that is the set that includes the set of factors that affect the understandability. And this we have an initial specification, and we are creating a tool to capture the information about all these factors to measure the understandability of the models. Well, to do that, when we have this feature vector, well, we make the evaluation model, and we can have a kind of understandability indicator. That is where the machine learning techniques can help us to measure the understandability of the model, because we want, in that case, to create a catalog of models with the results that we have got in order to determine what is more influential in terms of this level of understandability that we want to detect. Well, finally, the last step is the decoding the response, because depending on the result that we get with this indicator, well, there are now, we decodify it into two categories. That is the score of understandability of the model, and also the list of factors that are affecting negatively such understandability, in order to provide this feedback to the user of the modeling tool. Well, this is the end of this second part. And well, basically, it's also the most, I enter the final part, the part of the conclusion. Well, there are, you have here a set of references where we explain in detail all the things that are or conforms the history of this work. I would like to emphasize that, well, that final slide. Well, on the one side, where we are happy to have the chance to present in the Conceptual Modeling the ER conference this year, that very unfortunately going to be online because it was in India. That sounds a very amazing country to visit, but the situation is not good enough yet, so it's going to be virtual. But we are going to present the paper where we just focus on the transformation, a model-driven method for aligning business strategy and business processes. Well, you have this paper. You can find it here in his preliminary version. What is important is that I would like to finish as I started. You see that in that case here, we have again the same slide that we saw at the beginning. So we did that at the beginning. I think that Dan was asking about the full automation process. Well, we did a full automation process from conceptual models to a software application in this part that is at the end of this pile of processes. We started to extend this conceptual model-based software production process with business process modeling using communication analysis. So in that case, the important thing was that you don't have, when you work with only this information system modeling part, you could feel yourself as not doing extreme programming, but doing some kind of extreme conceptual modeling, creating conceptual models from scratch. And this is not the case. Conceptual model should be the representation, the correct representation of the business process models that characterize the enterprise that we are analyzing. So this is what we did with this business process modeling using communication analysis. So here we have a kind of BPMN model that was transformed, not fully automatically, but with as much automation as possible, to the set of classes and attributes and services that were present in the main class diagram structure of this set of conceptual models that were executed. So the transformation in that case was from the business process to the conceptual model-oriented information system. And what we are trying to do now is just going upper in this process. As I said before, we have business processes that we are modeling, but why these business processes are not others? And the answer to this question, why these business processes are not others, is just because the business processes that we are modeling are the ones that materialize the strategy that we have first characterized in the upper step of the process to accomplish this business strategy modeling method through the transformation process that we call Strat2Biz. So this is really the core of what we want to do, because our main point is to be able at the end, this is why we are talking about coming up next, is to have a software production process that is really software engineering oriented, in the sense that the process of modeling the strategy itself is also engineered. And the conversion of this strategic model to the business process model is also engineered. And going down in this pile of models and model transformation provides a strong, sound software engineering grounded method. That is what we try to do. Well, just a couple of slides more to finish. The first one is that one that is just fixing the guidelines of this transformation process between strategies and business processes. The intention is to support the design of strategically aligned business processes, as I said before. The main idea is to provide the guidelines that transform a business strategy model into elements of what we refer to as the re-engineered business process model. And as for any model-driven development process, we have the two parts here. We have, well, when we want to make a model transformation, either both the source model and the target model must have a clear, precise set of components, and the transformation must be a precise mapping, even a bijective, if possible, mapping between the concepts of the source model and their corresponding transformation, associated transformation in the target model. This is what we try to do with these strategies, inspired by the alignment practices that we have seen in the software-centric organizations and digital enterprises from the works of Forsgren and Highsmith, and with a clear goal in mind that is written here, that organizations must design and evolve their organizational structure according to the desired design of the information system. I go back to what we were commenting before, that is this clear and precise alignment between strategy, the structure, the organizational structure that is just delimiting the strategy, the different units of the company, and the systems that for each organizational structure are just giving the solution that is required in order to deal with this strategy. All that without forgetting that we should have a holistic, universal picture, a full picture of the enterprise model, that is the one that should allow us to define different views in a way that integrating all of these views, we just regenerate the whole strategy model of the company. Well, finally, when we were talking about guidelines, there are three main guidelines. The first one is the organization units independence. So we should provide a design that is able to determine any single business process for each organization unit. If there are connections, there is no problem, but they must be perfectly documented in the model and connected through the corresponding relationships that the Vitestrat model provides. The second guideline is related to the management of strategic dependencies. That is very important, because what we have to do here is to design the interaction that we find between business processes and the organization units that must manage the strategic dependencies. So this is something that helps to assess this traceability that we were commenting before, that is behind all probably the main purpose of the process that Vitestrat wants to put into practice. And finally, we have also to create the strategy to be able to measure strategic objectives. And this is what connects, this is the connection, the main connection point that links the strategy model with the business process model. Because when we are talking about objectives that must be measured, we have a clear way to identify business processes that should be the sound components of the business process models that are created as a materialization or representation of the strategy model. Okay, so again, this is the end. I like to finish as I started: model-driven systems engineering. This is our dream. This is the challenge that we are facing for years, for decades. I would say already. The challenge that more and more young people in different generations are still facing, with a lot of energy, a lot of illusion. Now we do it through these PhDs of René, of Rosa, and with the support of the previous PhDs, the doctor that already did their work on this context, that were basically Ignacio, Panac, Sergio, España, Marcela Ruiz, José Luis de la Vara, well, many others, because we are having there are many years already working on that, and we have a strong amount of work done together. Okay, João, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, voto portunhol, orgulhoso de estar em esta celebração, feliz. Muito obrigado pela invitação, Júlio, Jaelson, Gabriela e todo o time de web.
Well, thank you very much for this great presentation. I have some questions. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Óscar, the first one by Danbury.
Yes, I saw. Thanks for the correction. Yes, you are right. There is a mistake there. We will fix it for sure. There is another question that is, so the measure of effectiveness of this understandability learned machine is whether it has high recall and precision relative to human assessment of understandability. Yes, the answer is yes. There are pros and cons here. Pros is that the concept, the intuition is clear. The cons is that, well, could be too subjective, but we want to start taking into account this indicator, this factor, and probably new questions, new issues will appear from that. But yes, this is our starting point for measuring effectiveness.
And another question by Graciela.
Yes, there are. Where are you using the concepts of situational method engineering, specifically situational factors? Well, I think that I would say, Gabriela, thanks for the question. I would say that we take a kind of philosophical approach. We have seen, as Jaelson was commenting before, we see that there are many good works done. Many good works. Well, iStar is a clear reference that is an inspiration for us. But we have the E3 value of Rule Vioringa, Jaap Gording, and others. We have, of course, Archimate, BMM. So we want to try to avoid this wheel reinventing effect. And to do that, what we are trying is to apply situational method engineering to detect which parts of these methods are compatible. In some cases are even parallel, they do the same. And we are trying to focus on the commonalities, reinforcing commonalities, and using a situational method engineering to delimit these components and putting them together to create something new that, respecting what has been done, when the combination is different, what is created is a new artifact. So this is the sense in which we use situational method engineering. Is that an answer? Is this answering your question, Graciela? Luis is commenting the situation is probably a key constructor concept to include in the model. Well, in that case, the situation was used more in a contextual way. It could be, but we mean by situation mainly the context and the components that needs to be put together. So it's a kind of mechanism. We just take some pieces that are managed in a different way, but with a common intuition. We identify these common components that are really useful for users, and we try to create a new puzzle with these reused pieces. But in any case, what is clear, we were discussing with Jolita and Jaap that are, well, they have done a lot of work in situational method engineering, and we were discussing with them how to do that correctly. And well, we are following what the typical situational method engineering practice, but it's true that the situation concept is, again, a concept that must have a clear ontological background.
Okay, now pass to Júlio.
Oh, ok. Óscar, de novo, muito obrigado, né, pela palestra. Eu tinha uma pergunta específica sobre o entendimento dos modelos, mas vou deixar isso para uma outra ocasião e vou fazer uma pergunta mais geral. Você tem sido um ferrenho, um advogado constante da modelagem conceitual. Vamos dizer assim, um dos bastiões da modelagem conceitual, né? Ao ponto de que você teve toda aquela experiência com o pessoal de biologia, para poder fazer a modelagem conceitual a nível de genética, e, enfim, essa é só uma afirmação que talvez seja uma verdade que não precisa ser...
grande desafio. É um grande desafio para aquele domínio, vai ser muito complicado.
Agora, a minha pergunta para você é o seguinte: você tem visto vamos dizer, um progresso em relação ao maior número de pessoas movendo indo nessa direção, na direção de que modelagem conceitual é central, ou seja, modelar é fundamental? Você vê um crescimento?
Yes, sí, Julio, voy a hablar en inglés por si están los compañeros ingleses también. Me gustaría de contestar en portuñol, but I think that your question is very, very interesting to me, because, you know, my answer is yes. The conceptual modeling to me should be the central, the crucial capability of a software engineer, because software engineering is about abstraction. And abstraction is about being able to conceptualize. And conceptualizing is what makes us human beings different from any other species in the earth, in the planet that we share with all the other species. Conceptualizing is what makes us sapiens different from everybody. And when we talk to each other, if we have different models in our mind, you know what is the result of the discussions. Historically, we look at history. We have the example of Ukraine. Now it is war. When we discuss, if you don't agree, you are wrong, because if you were clever, you should agree with me, because I am. It is my idea. No idea can be brilliant. It is not mine. So conceptualizing is something that is strictly required when we want to communicate with a machine, because if we want to communicate with a machine, there is no other way to do that than having a common and sharing a common view of the model. And this model is the one that is going to guide our interaction with the machine. So why conceptual modeling is not recognized as the essential software engineering capability for informatics? I don't know. You know that I am all my life doing that. Even when we are working now, I have been, my talk today has been centered around model-driven information system engineering. But when I talk about the genome and the understanding the genome, what I think that I'm doing is model-driven of life, of the language of life. We try to decipher the language of life because it's the same metaphor. We have, in that case, the language. We don't have a binary code. We don't have zeros and ones. We have the nucleotide, 4 letters code, but we have the code, and we want to know what are the programming languages and the models that creates a given type of life and not another. So in some way, it's a model-driven life science. And it's the same. We need to do conceptual modeling in order to be able to interpret the data that more and more the genome technologies are providing. So I think that conceptual modeling is essential, but the reality is that conceptual modeling is not present in almost any curricula in software engineering. And I think that it's a reality that conceptual modeling is not at all a capability that has been assessed by software engineers when they complete their degree and even their master degree. I think that is an issue that we have. I don't see, and I will see that, or I will disappear from the earth before. But it is interesting to me to see that everybody is talking about conceptual modeling. Everybody, we are conceptualized animals. We conceptualize. Well, I like to use the example of politics, because if we imagine that in Brazil, you are in a group that are discussing between who is the right guy, either Bolsonaro or Lula. Well, look at the conceptual problem. I think that very, very many few people that are for example, Lula supporters try to understand why people that are supporting Bolsonaro are doing it, because there are reasons. We are not crazy. People have always concepts in their minds. And the people that are supporting Bolsonaro should do the same with friends that are supporting Lula. Why do you do that? And they should understand that there are some concepts that are different, but we don't act in this conceptual modeling oriented perspective. We act just putting our passion and our emotions with no concept at all in the discussion. I said Lula Bolsonaro because you could say the same everywhere. Trump and Biden in the States, and Sanchez and Feijóo in Spain, and Le Pen and Macron in France. Is the same everywhere. So if we are not able to do that, I can understand why conceptual modeling is not present in the curricula of computer science. And what I would like to say to finish that is that, in my talk, the title of some of my last talks is From Homo sapiens to Homo genius. I think that we are acting as sapiens when we don't rationalize, we don't conceptualize. If we conceptualize, the difference would be so big that we could look like another species, another humanity that is the genius, that is just used to understand and to listen to the others in order to create a channel of communication that is more productive. Anyway, eu não sei por que terminei falando disto, Júlio, mas a sua questão foi muito inspiradora.
Exatamente, Óscar. Muito obrigado. É sempre bom escutar isso, porque é um discurso que a gente tem que propagar, né? A importância de você modelar e principalmente o viés de modelagem conceitual. Muito obrigado.
Temos agora mais 3 minutos. Tem a questão Jaelson.
Óscar, parabéns. Muito interessante aí.
Obrigado a você, Jaelson.
Ok. A minha pergunta é também de caráter genérico, certo? Você está rezando para nós, certo? Somos todos da mesma religião aqui, então não vai reach out mais, né? Estamos já convencidos disso. A minha pergunta é como convencer os business, né, people, né? The enterprise people, né? Você tem tido essa experiência, né? Do outro lado, ou seja, o que você quer fazer, as pessoas estão entendendo, né, na área de negócios, né, nos departamentos, nas empresas, o que você quer fazer, estão achando que isso vai, de fato, fazer um impacto, né, neles. I can rephrase in English, just for Dunbury.
Okay.
Dunbury. I was just asking Óscar how he can tell us about his experience trying to convince people that are not in our community, but in the business community, you know, that these approaches are required, are necessary.
Well, I am thinking that a lot during the last years. I think probably during all my career. And I think that the answer is the experimental evidence. I think that when we talk about conceptual modeling, the abstract language is very clear, but there are not evidences, and we try to work on that is clearly showing that if you do things and you develop system with a sound conceptual modeling perspective, what we get is much better than what we get without that. And we don't have these cases because the tragedy in computer science is that whatever we do, you have something. So the system is working in some way. So I think that we miss the point that could be working much better and could be just reflecting the user's requirements much accurately. So, well, this international center, that is the problem, is computer science problem. That is against requirements engineering, because computer science should be at the service of clients, of users, and not the contrary. The user shouldn't just be surprised because the system is not doing what I would like it to do. And this is what is happening. So I think that we need to be much stronger in tools and in empirical evidence of things that are working better with conceptual modeling background than without. And probably a good example is probably the avionics, the plane industry. because in that case, the thing is serious. Because if we have a problem in a restaurant application to pay the invoice, okay, they make another invoice and this is okay. But with a plane, the problem is that if the plane falls down, it is a big problem. So the software must be checked 100%. And even if still we can have problems, I think that, well, when you have to do it, you do it, but just because in that case, it's not acceptable to have any minor problem that is not compliant with the requirements of the plane. So this is just an exception. I think that in many applications, especially in what we call organizational systems, what we have is much worse than what we could have, but it's what we have, and there is no way to compare with what we could have to show that doing things in this different way would be better. So if we don't do that, if we don't have empirical evidences, experimental evidences, it seems that the speech is a kind of political, abstract, and unrealistic speech. So our big effort, Jaelson, must be to create tools and demonstrate with clear experiments what is wrong as a result of not having a conceptual modeling background, and why, if we do it with a conceptual model support, the results are much better.
Okay, thank you. I think you are run out of time, and I need to close session. Let's thank again Óscar Pastor. It was a great talk. I think I got really inspired by this talk. As usual, I think it was amazing. Thank you very much, Óscar, and thanks for being here and passing all this knowledge and experience to all of us. Excellent. Thank you very much. So.